This is the Doing Scary Things podcast. I'm Katie. I'm a veteran photographer, a serial entrepreneur, an aspiring author, and a relentless optimist. I'm a slow-talking, deep thinker from the Appalachian Mountains.
I'm Anna. I'm a prodigal musician, an accidental psychotherapist, and I'm living life mostly by experiment and endless curiosity. I'm a redheaded speed talker from a Midwestern farm town.
The purpose of this podcast is to talk to people who are doing some pretty scary things in their life about what it takes for them to push past fear and keep themselves going every day.
We'll also unpack the vulnerable things we're pursuing in our own lives and hopefully offer encouragement to you wherever you are on your journey.
Man, that was brilliant.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Doing Scary Things podcast. Today we're going to be talking with volcanologist Dr. Janine Krippner. I met Janine recently while touring with Paper Lights, and I was immediately fascinated by her career and her passion for it, and I knew I wanted to talk with her more. So I really hope you enjoy today's interview.
So Katie has met you before, and it's the first time I'm meeting you, so I would just like to know if you'd introduce yourself and tell at least me just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Janine Krippner. I'm at Concord University here in West Virginia, but clearly I don't sound like I'm from here. I'm from New Zealand. I moved to the States 6 years ago to do my PhD studying volcanoes, and it's been fantastic. I've studied explosive volcanic eruptions and their deposits using data I've collected in the field in Russia and on Mount St. Helens, and also using satellite data. So data collected from space as well, which is pretty cool.
That is more than pretty cool. That's so cool. So interesting.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, How did you land in West Virginia? Did you study there and you stayed there, or did you study somewhere else and then go to West Virginia?
I did my PhD at the University of Pittsburgh, and it was actually crazy. It was a whirlwind. I finished my PhD, went to a conference. I was looking for jobs, and then I got involved in communicating a volcanic crisis that was occurring on the other side of the world. So I was working through the night every night for over 3 months, and then this job popped up. I saw it on Twitter, and I applied in December and then moved here early the first week of January.
How's it been? How is West Virginia anything like New Zealand?
We've met some pretty amazing musicians here.
Love it.
But it's very pretty. Everyone's very friendly, which is great. New Zealand is such a friendly place, so that's really nice. I've had a lot of people when I first came here just come to my office and say, "We're so happy to have you here. Welcome." So that was really nice.
That's sweet.
That's awesome.
Good job, West Virginia.
Yeah. That was totally our experience, too. I mean, obviously, we met with my husband's band, Paper Lights. They toured through Athens, West Virginia, where you're at. And yeah, everybody's so just hospitable and really, really sweet. And it's just a beautiful town as well.
It is. And when I first arrived in Pittsburgh, no one could really understand what I was saying. So people can understand me better here. Something about the accent here is much easier than the Pittsburghese accent.
That's amazing.
Those are really different accents, like just from Pittsburgh to West Virginia too. So
It is
That's
very
funny.
much so.
Okay, so, and forgive me, so is the correct term volcanologist?
Yes. Yeah.
And I asked you this in person, but I want to ask you again. So how did you know that was a thing, and how did you get started in that? Tell us a little bit about that.
For a long time, I didn't know it was a thing. I always loved volcanoes since I was really little. Like I remember watching videos that my grandfather took of eruptions in Vanuatu and Hawaii when I was very young, and I was just in love with these things. And growing up in New Zealand, there are volcanoes down there as well, so I just loved them. Every time I was near them, I was like, this is the most amazing thing in the world. But it wasn't until I was 13 in a geography class that the teacher wrote volcanologist on the board and explained what that was. And I sat back in my chair and thought, that's what I am. And
That's so cool.
I love that.
yeah, it was like it just changed my whole life, that one word. And now I'm 32 and still doing it. So
13 to 32. I love that. It struck you immediately as an identity.
yes, it did. Yeah, it's looking back. I didn't think that's what I want to do. My words in my head were that's what I am.
That's so profound. I love it.
Talk us through a little bit of from 13 and knowing that and just feeling that so much into like what was the process to get trained and certified? What was that like?
Long and hard. I was in my second year of high school when I was 13. So, clearly that took a bit of patience waiting to go to university, but I looked it up on what limited internet there was at the time, and I knew I had to do a PhD. So I knew at 13 I was going to go to get a bachelor's degree and a master's degree and a PhD. I doubted myself along the way, of course, naturally, especially before I got to university and wasn't actually surrounded by it. I was like, can I do this? I have no idea how, because I didn't know any scientists. I was really just jumping off a diving board into the deep end with a tiny amount of information, and which has changed now. There are a lot of us online which kids can get in touch with, which is great.
Yeah.
But I went to university at the University of Waikato in New Zealand for my bachelor's degree. And for my master's degree, one of the volcanoes that I would stare at thinking, I'm so in love with this thing, I ended up studying it. Wow. So I got my dream volcano for my first ever project. It's actually Ngarahoe volcano, which is Mount Doom in Lord of the Rings. Most people know that. So
nice.
That was really, really cool. And then I actually moved to Australia for 3 years. My mum's from Australia. My grandfather was dying, and he's an amazing musician. So I was very, very close with him. And so I moved over there for a while, and I think it was the week or two after he died, I met my PhD advisor, who was from the University of Pittsburgh. And then within months, I moved over here to start my PhD. And I finished that a year ago. And now I'm a postdoctoral researcher.
Do you know how many volcanologists like you there are?
I don't know a specific number. Usually at conferences, there'll be, I don't know, maybe between 1,000 to 2,000 from around the world. Compared to other industries, not that much.
Right. I was thinking that, when you were finding out about it on the limited internet that there was, it's so true. Like you felt so strongly sort of identified with this career, but you didn't know anyone in your community yet. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and I try to change that now. So I did a blog post specifically for girls, but, it's hopefully helpful for boys and women and men of all ages as well, where I had over 100 women volcanologists say what they do, what they love about it, why it's important, and advice for young girls who are, for anything, just following their dreams, following science if that's what they want. So trying to make us more accessible to younger people or older people, anyone that's new to the field wanting to get into it.
That's so cool and so important. I think so much of it, and I shared a little of this, I think, when we talked in person, but it's like, I just feel like so many people don't know even, what career options are available. And so, I love that you're out there, helping to educate people. I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah. And the story is, no matter what you want to do, go for it. It might not be easy, but who cares? If it's what you want to do, it's worth it.
Well, that concludes our podcast.
Yeah.
Just kidding, but what an amazing thing to underscore. And it's so true. We're here for that. That's so good.
No, I believe that with everything in me. And I don't know if, I can't pinpoint anything that would be easy. It's like we all have this mindset of, we talk about this a lot. It's like, if I'm meant to do something, then, surely it'll come naturally to me, but that's not always the case, and you were in school for, how many years to learn this? And
10 years of university.
Yeah.
Wow.
A big commitment. Well, and you said you doubted yourself naturally, which I love that you implicitly acknowledge that's a natural part of the process. But what was that doubt like for you? What form did that take?
It's kind of hard to pinpoint the doubt that creeps in. But it's, I still have moments of different areas of what if I'm not good enough? I shouldn't the hard part about figuring out what you want to do when you're 13 years old is the rest of your life you feel like you're very much behind where you want to be. So that's a big problem that I have, is I always feel behind. I always feel like I should be better than I am.
Like you should have figured it out when you were 3 instead of 13?
Oh, yeah.
What do you
I
mean?
should have, I should have got my PhD sooner, and I should know what this job ends in January, and I have no idea what my next step is, and that's less than 5 months away. So there's a lot of doubt that comes with it, but I don't doubt this is what I want to do, and I don't doubt that I'm going to make it happen. I just have no idea how.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, and I can certainly relate to that on a totally different career path and world. Like that's so powerful, and it's like you're making decisions not based on, okay, these are my next 5 steps, but it's more based on, like you said, this is who I am. Mm-hmm. This is what I'm doing. Like, this is important to me. So I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I will get there.
Yeah. And you can know what you want to do generally. Like, I know I want to help people. I know I want to study explosive volcanic eruptions. I know I want to work with communities. I know I want to help our field move forward in how we communicate using social media and through the media. I don't know how I'm going to do that or where in the world I'm going to do that, but I know that those are my main goals, and they're based around helping people, and I will figure out a way.
I love that. That's so powerful. Dr. Janine Krippner, you are Twitter verified. Thank you very much.
Got the blue tick. Yep.
You are. And quite an impressive quote here by Forbes. If I can just read that really quick. Yes. You are a smiter of ludicrous volcanological rumors.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah.
She looks down.
What have you smitten?
Yeah, so that kind of started with the Agung crisis, which is a volcanic crisis that occurred in Bali starting in September last year. I started out just translating the official information, which was in Indonesian, using Google Translate and my volcanology knowledge into English, and helping people understand what basic volcanic processes and hazards and dangers are, and what they need to do to protect themselves, and where they can get the official information. And I stayed pretty quiet on the smiting at that point. But there was a particular tabloid from the UK that was they just pushed me over the edge. I got to the point where I was like, no one listened to them. They're full of BS. And
bleep.
They were just making stuff up to scare people, which was damaging the local tourism economy, because people were canceling their trips to Bali, which is an island that strongly relies on tourism. And having been there, I understand this. So I just started really calling them out, and it's never really stopped.
And Twitter was like, ka-ching, verified.
Check mark. She knows her stuff. Yeah. That's awesome, though. That's really important.
It's very brave.
Yeah. I was afraid at first. I was thinking, I don't want to piss off a giant tabloid corporation, but up to the point where I had so many people messaging me afraid, not only for themselves, but their family, their kids who were in Bali on holiday. People who are mad that they cancelled their trip 2 months ago and the volcano hadn't erupted yet. So having these people reaching out to me and feeling the frustration and the fear from them really upset me. People didn't deserve to be frightened like that for no reason. Yes, the hazards are very real and they're very dangerous, but not like what the media was putting out there. So they needed a voice. They needed someone to go, no, this is junk. This is what you need to listen to. And so I just jumped in.
I love that. Good for you.
Thank you for doing that.
My pleasure.
Did they reach out to you in any way? That
no
tabloid or whatever?
No, but I did actually get, surprisingly, a request for an interview last week. And so I wrote out a response, and I was like, I'm sorry, I cannot work with you. I cannot work with your organization until basically you work with values of promoting truth and sharing what's right, because until you do that, I'm not interested. And of course, in my smiting style, I put my response on Twitter as well for everyone to see.
Yes, your smiting style. Points for style. I love it.
it. Was that scary? Or was it just like, no, this is the right thing to do, I'm going to do it? Or was there part of you that was like, how is this going to be received? Or
yeah, I mean, I'm not someone who's okay with conflict. Conflict scares the crap out of me. Like, I'd rather be friends with everyone. And so, yeah, taking a stand like that is scary. But having seen the damage that this stuff does to people, that's more important than my fear of conflict. So I don't call people out by name. I don't want to be cruel or mean. That's not what I'm about. But I'm definitely taking a stand with, if your organization is going to behave this way and you are not holding them accountable, I'm not going to work with you. And I've worked with, I've done over 100, I think around 150 media interviews since last September. So there aren't that many people I say no to, because I see how hard the majority of them are trying to get the right information. These reporters, writers, journalists, they'll cover a huge range of topics in a day. So we need to help them as specialists in our field to understand what right information to put in their work. And I really appreciate the people who are working really hard to do that.
It's brilliant.
You mentioned that in a few months, this gig is up and you're not sure what's going to happen next. But more broadly, I want to ask you, what are you pursuing in your life right now as a volcanologist or otherwise that scares you? And is that part of what scares you? Or are there many things that scare you? Or is there something else that scares you that you'd rather talk about?
There's a lot that scares me right now, actually. But, it's all about fearing the fear and doing it anyway, feeling the fear. I'm currently applying for a visa renewal, so that's frightening. Not having any idea where I'm going to land a job in 5 months is frightening, because as a foreigner, if I don't have a job, I have to evacuate the country, basically. So I have a job specifically in my field to meet my visa requirements, or I'm out. So that's definitely a timeline that I'm trying to work with. But I'm in a couple of weeks going to Italy for a conference, and I'm co-chairing a session and a panel discussion on how we can use social media to communicate these volcanic events worldwide. And I'm trying to bring people from volcano observatories and universities all together. And it hasn't been done yet. So I'm very excited about it, but I'm also nervous. I just never know how people are going to receive these things. But with all the things I'm trying to do, I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for the people that I've seen have struggled. I'm doing it for the people that I've seen have needed information and haven't had access to it. So I think when your motivation is something outside yourself, even though it might be a bit scary, that doesn't even matter. You just do it anyway.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, we like to talk about, how being scared isn't really, for us, like, it's not a good enough reason to not do something. Like, if that's the only reason, then that's it. You just got to do it scared.
Yep.
It helps to have a really powerful motivator that propels you to do it anyway. That propels you to go, okay, this outweighs the fear, so I can do it scared and I want to, and it's worth it.
Yeah, like it's not easy putting yourself out there on social media for the entire world and media around the world to see, but it has to be done. I've seen that myself, so I'm doing it.
Thank you for shedding light on the fact that not only do you not know what your job's going to be in 5 months, but if you don't have a job, you might be forced to leave the country, and I think that's a perspective a lot of people probably don't think about. I work with a lot of freelancers, and, it's like there's this constant applying for jobs, so to speak, or going on interviews, trying to get work, but it's like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, I'm not, I'm going to be a little short on my bills or whatever, it's terrifying. Like, I'm not trying to make light of that, but it's like, this is big time. And you're saying essentially, like, something's going to work out. I mean, that's what I'm reading between the lines and hearing from you is like, it's scary, but something will work out,
Yeah. And I think it's important to know, like I've been through a lot, and I know that no matter what happens, I can handle it. I don't know how right now, but I know we'll figure it out along the way. And having that knowledge and faith in yourself knowing that you can react very calmly to very stressful situations, and you can sit back and go, okay, this is a curveball. Now what do I do? And also having people around the world, friends, and I have an incredible family back home, and I'm very grateful and very lucky that I have that. So I'm not completely by myself. I have that support, and I'm tough. I've got this.
That's right.
I love it. Well, where do you think that understanding comes from? That knowing that you'll be okay, you can handle it. Do you have any idea?
Yeah. Being in situations where you don't know if you're going to be okay, and then getting through it. For me, it's come from the hard times where times have been bad, and I have got through it. So if I've got through everything before, I can get through this.
That's so good to hear.
Yeah.
It's like very encouraging to hear.
Put a pin in that, because you're going to need to remember later exactly how successful you were here, and being able to see it from the other side is so important. And I think it's really easy for us to focus on the negative things and just get distracted by, what are the current problems on the horizon. And sometimes that, overshadows what we have been through. So I think it's really poignant, like having an awareness of the things that you have overcome and giving yourself credit for them. Like you said,
yeah,
you're strong.
Yeah.
You've proven it,
Yeah, like we've all been through stuff. We've all been through challenges. We've all been through uncertainty. We've all been through really tough times. We've all, I don't want to use the word failed, because failure is so important to success, but we've all, what we at the time would call fail. We've all lost people. We've all lost, opportunities. We've all been through stuff, and we've all got through it. If we all look at the place we are right now, everything that has hit us in life, we've got through. So the next few things that will hit us, we'll get through those too, and we'll be stronger because of it.
I just want you to give me pep talks every morning. I'm just going to record your voice and just play it. But this is so powerful. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Just to shift gears a little bit, we've talked a little bit about the fact that we do believe everybody's creative. And unfortunately, a lot of people, in my opinion, misuse the word creativity, and a lot of times only use it in regard to artistic fields. And so those people that are not in an art field, such as painting or singing or what have you, don't always get labeled as creative. But I would just love to ask you, do you personally see yourself as creative? And if so, how has that come into play in your job?
In science, you have to be. Especially volcanology, you're going out there, if you're in the kind of area that I am, you're looking at a problem, like whether it's a volcano, a really old one, or one that's about to erupt, or one that erupted recently. And you've got to figure out what happened, or what might happen, and how it might affect people. And you can't see the magma. You can't see what you're trying to figure out. So you have to do a lot of problem solving, and you have to be really creative about what might have happened or what might happen in the future, backed up by data, of course. But even collecting scientific data requires you to be creative, coming up with new ways to collect data, coming up with new ways to process the data, whether it's on a computer or in the lab. Asking new questions. You're not going to come up with new answers if you're not asking new questions that someone hasn't asked before, like looking at something and going, why is that the way it is? And then gathering as much information as you can, and then making sense of that. So science is all about being creative.
It's a lot of innovation.
It is. You can't, the different areas of science, whether it's monitoring volcanoes, which requires putting different data sets together, which are very different. So you have to work with people and come together with these little bits and make a whole picture. Or whether you're mapping a volcano, you actually have to think of this system in 3 dimensions. Well, 4 if you're including time as well. So it's a different way of thinking. And in geology, sometimes you're thinking on the scale of millions of years, which requires a different way of thinking as well. So yeah, creativity is extremely important.
You almost can't do science without it.
No, you can't. You can do the same thing that everyone's done over and over again, which in many areas is important too, but to come up with new things, which volcanology is a lot about. You go to a new volcano, every volcano is different. You got to figure it out from the bottom up.
Can you think of a time your job has been like either super challenging or super rewarding? Anything you want to touch on there?
I think when it comes to rewarding the Agung crisis, I got a lot of the questions that I mentioned, but I also got a lot of personal thank you notes and people explaining how the information I was giving was helping them, whether it was they felt safe in knowing that they could prepare themselves if they were in Bali or going to Bali. So a lot of that is protecting the eyes and mouth or the airways from volcanic ash. People understanding what the hazard zones were and where not to be. So the personal thank yous of, I feel safe now, I feel prepared, I feel okay because of what you told me. That was one of the most gratifying things I've ever had in my life. And
that's awesome.
Challenging. God, I got to pick one there. I think,
or just walk us through some of the challenges you face on a regular basis.
I think one of the last really big challenges was finishing my PhD. I mean, not only is that a challenge in itself, but something that a lot of people maybe don't perhaps think about. Finishing a PhD, by that stage, you're exhausted on every level. So you've got to find something inside you and pull it out from some dark depths that you didn't know you had it to actually have the mental energy to keep going. And I think that's very common with the end of a PhD with people I know. Like you're nearly there. You're so close. PhD is anywhere from 3 to, I don't know, some cases 15 years. Mine took 5. So you're done. You're so done. And when you're that exhausted, it's really hard to keep pushing. You're so fatigued in every way. And then on top of that is the uncertainty about not knowing what job you're going to go to next. And it's really exhausting. And those are the times where I got through that by exercising 2 to 3 hours a day.
Wow.
I would go out walking, like very, very fast walking in the morning and the evening, and just taking very regular breaks and just really, trying to work on self-care and watching volcanic eruption videos. I mean, that's probably not for everyone, but that worked for me.
But you recommend
I recommend it, yeah.
We should try it.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Reminding yourself why you're doing what you're doing when everything is that hard and you're that exhausted. Just really, I'd write it down. Why am I doing this? I want to help people. I want to help understand volcanoes more. I want to do this.
I just have to say, as someone who grew up in the Midwest where everything is completely flat and volcanoes only exist in our imaginations and fantasies, like it's just really interesting to hear about your work and your passion and your vision for this, because, had I never talked to you, like obviously I knew volcanoes existed, but I never have thought through that, how, the flow of communication is so important and probably involves a lot of languages and, a lot of accessibility issues in certain areas. And it's just this whole world of challenges I never thought about.
Yeah.
And it's kind of occurring to me, I guess, that community is very lucky to have you because you're such a champion for it. And, I'm just like one little person from a cornfield, but I didn't even know those problems existed. I never thought about it.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. And one of the big challenges is that you guys might not live by volcanoes now, but you might go on vacation to a volcano one day. And
I hope so.
Feel rumbling and look up in the sky and there's an ash plume and you might go, I don't know what that is. I don't know what's happening. Someone help me.
I'm going to tweet you.
Yeah, follow me on Twitter. I'll do what I can.
Yeah.
But it's, a lot of people that are in a lot of areas where there might be an eruption might not be from that area. Tourism is, it's so easy to fly to a volcano now. So many people do. And you don't have to be on the ground to be affected by it. Back in 2010, Eyjafjallajökull in Iceland grounded planes for days, causing several $1 billion in economic damage because of that. So it's that affects a lot of different aspects of our society. Imagine if you had a moderate sized eruption in California or Oregon or Washington, and the ash went over the United States, like we're seeing the ash from the fires right now. That's completely different ash. It does not have the same effect on airplanes, but volcanic ash can take an airplane down. Luckily, no airplanes have actually crashed, but it can stop engines. So far, every time that's happened, they've got the engines going again. But, if you're in an airplane, you want to know that volcanologists are watching these volcanoes and ash plumes, knowing to tell the airplane to not go in them.
You're right. You're so correct about that.
Thank you so much.
I do want to know that volcanologists are on that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and I really just love hearing your heart too, that you're in this to help people.
Yeah.
And, I think I just get so tired of things in our society that separate us, right? And so I just feel like a lot of times we categorize people, right? I mean, there's people in medical fields, and there's scientists, and there's artists, and like maybe we're not all crossing paths, but it's like at the end of the day, hopefully, we're striving for the same things, right? And helping each other. That's such a core, like, I just can't think of anything more important. And so I love the creativity behind the ways that you're using your knowledge and your craft to, reach other people. I just find that fascinating.
Yeah. And your humanity. Like, it's so obvious that you care so much about this,
Yeah, I really do. And, that's something that, as I've said, gets me through it, but it's also something that's very difficult at times too. Seeing people get hurt in eruptions is, that never gets easier. The amount of times I've been on the verge of tears while I'm tweeting about something where someone's got hurt, or multiple people, like the eruption in Guatemala a few months back. It's heartbreaking every time, and it doesn't get easier, and it's so frustrating because this stuff just does happen. And in volcanology as a field, every little bit of the science, which is so diverse, all of that adds towards understanding these volcanoes. So hopefully we can get people out of the way while the volcanoes do their things, and then they can move back again. So there's the dark side to it too. And caring helps, but it also makes it very difficult at times.
To some extent, maintaining your compassion for people is hard, because you sort of have to be vulnerable and expose yourself to feeling that hurt in order to stay connected and to keep caring, that can be exhausting too in a lot of different fields where you're around pain and suffering. And especially if you feel like, your work, it directly impacts the pain and suffering of other people. It can be a really heavy burden.
Yeah.
What was the first time you ever set foot at a volcano or on a volcano? Do you know?
I would have been little. I actually grew up in a beautiful little town, Te Awamutu in New Zealand, and it's smack bang in the middle of a ring of extinct volcanoes. So
that's awesome.
There's 4 that you can see from most directions, and then there's more outside of that as well. So yeah, extinct volcanoes, very, very, very little. I'm sure I was taken to that mountain when I was a baby.
Right.
But we have larger, more active volcanoes down a couple of hours south from where I grew up. And I was very, very young going to those as well. So I don't remember. I was too young.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that is kind of cool, though. It's just always been there.
But erupting volcano was Japan in 2013.
Wow.
And I was on Sakurajima volcano, which is a very active volcano down the very south of the main islands of Japan. And we were standing on it and it started erupting. And it was such a cool moment that I named my future cat Sakura after the volcano, finally seeing a volcano erupt.
So is it still a future cat? Do you have
I have the cat now, and she's adorable. In fact, when I was going through the Agung crisis, the cats would end up on Twitter every now and again too. So
I love it.
They were a part. She was a part of a few of my interviews. She threw up halfway through one of my interviews. She ended up on my lap on live TV in China or Singapore because she just started freaking out when I was about to go live on television. So they're a part of my work too.
Always trying to steal the spotlight, it sounds like.
She is.
My cats are currently locked away 2 doors away from us because they will do things exactly like that.
Yes.
So
they're always trying to get on the podcast.
But, also always blessed to meet a fellow cat lover. So.
I think there's something about cat lovers that you can trust them more, I think.
Right. We'll go with that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Something like that. I love dogs too. I'm not an anti-dog person.
Yeah, I'm not either. I just really favor my own cats. They're really fun.
Yeah,
I just personally relate more to cats, like the napping, and it's like I'm on your level. I get it.
Yeah,
I know not all cats are the same. I'm not trying to.
No, but as a generalization, they are. They're relatable. They have these weird humanistic ish
something like that.
Things.
It's not scientific at all.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
We're being creative about our cats.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Connect the dots.
I would love for you to talk to us a little bit more about the work you're doing in social media, because that sounds fascinating. And also, I always like to point these things out, but, 10 years in school to become trained and an expert in your field. And then it's like, because of the world we live in, social media is like a whole other field, right? But you're taking these strides and using it to your advantage. So important. So yeah, talk to us a little bit more about that work, if you don't mind.
Yeah, there was no training in social media. If you think of, how long people have been studying the world, whether it's earthquakes, volcanoes, tornadoes, hurricanes, social media is brand new. And 24/7 online media, like tabloids and news articles, that's brand new as well. And some fields have been doing it more. So I look a lot to meteorology because they have a tornado season. They have hurricane season. They have, flash flooding is going on a lot right now. So they have a lot more chances to get it right, to figure out how to do this. But with volcanology, like there are around 40 volcanoes erupting around the world right now. But most people don't know about most of them. And you only really hear about the ones that are impacting, well, a lot of them are impacting people, but impacting people in a location where the media grabs onto it. That's the only time we hear about them in the news. So understanding how it's like some of the things I've learned are, first of all, the human side, putting that out is important. You can communicate the best science in the world, but if people think you're a jerk, they're not going to listen. It's important to show that you care, to show that you're a human, because, it's what we are.
Right.
So true.
To try and preempt what might come up that you have to address. Like a lot of the tabloid headlines are very fear-mongering and just outright not true. People will jump on the worst case scenario for another volcano and worry about that for a volcano that's erupting. Like, will it trigger the next volcano next to it? Most of the time, that's no. Will it cause a massive magnitude 8 earthquake? No, volcanoes generally don't do that. Will it cause a tsunami? No, this volcano is nowhere near the ocean. Will Hawaii trigger off Mount St. Helens? No, that's just impossible. Like, there are all of these things that pop up constantly. You're like, where did that come from?
Right.
No. And this is why there's a no. So it's constantly being on the game, looking at what rumors are popping up and addressing them in a way that doesn't make you look like a pompous jerk, but also makes people realize that, you're not taking crap. You're going to tell them when something's not right, and you're going to tell them when they should be concerned.
Yeah, like there's enough to worry about that is a real threat all the time, constantly in the world. Like, let's not pile on to it. I feel like
let's not make up imaginary things to fear.
For sure. Especially just based on like misinformation, or even if it's just completely made up. I mean, that certainly happens too, I'm sure. But I relate to this a little bit because being from the Midwest, I lived in like Tornado Alley. So tornadoes are just kind of a normal part of life. Yes, they're destructive, but most people around there know what to do. They do know how to protect themselves. And like you said, we have a lot more practice because it's like a season happens all the time. But when I moved to Georgia, any severe weather, but ice and snow and tornadoes down here are just
everybody panics.
But even the meteorology broadcasting, oh my gosh, lock down everything. And my husband and I always joke about everyone wants to go make their milk sandwiches because they go buy all the bread and milk. Like, oh, you got to eat your milk sandwich.
I'm not sure what we're going to do with all this bread and milk.
Yeah, but it's just funny because, in the Midwest, sure, they report on it and they tell you factual information and they might remind you how to stay safe, and it's very helpful. But down here, it does seem to be a little bit more of a panic. And, who's to say how much of that is just genuinely because it feels like more of a panic? because of where we are, or how much it's getting a lot of ratings and a lot of viewing, and like that's kind of a messy side of all of that, I think.
Yeah, and it's I'm glad you brought up the panic thing, because you're right, it can be really hard communicating these things, and there are misconceptions with people putting you in those silos of who you are and what you stand for. And one big misconception with hazard scientists like volcanologists is you're hiding something and you don't want to tell us because you're afraid that we're going to panic. But we know that in volcanology, it's much, much harder to get people to do anything unless they live by a volcano and they know what it does and they see what it does. Getting people to actually do something is really hard. So the whole we're hiding something from you because we don't want you to panic doesn't even exist in our minds, because we know you're not going to. I mean, a few people might, but trying to get you to
we're not really worried.
Yeah, we're not worried about making you panic because it's not a thing the majority of the time.
Wow.
No, I love that. And I'm just connecting in my brain. It's like, I love that these are based on facts, right? You're like, no, that would never happen. That's not possible. These aren't real things. And I go back to earlier in the interview when you were saying, I wasn't sure I was good enough, but I have this evidence that, I got through something before. And so that tells me I can get through something again. And so, again, my head is just connecting in a really weird way, like scientific fear to whatever other kind of fear you want to call it. But I'm just a fan of smiting, if you will, all kinds of fear, especially when it's only hurting ourselves, it's keeping us from meeting our full potential or what have you.
Yeah, you've really got to look at your fears and be like, okay, why am I worried about this right now? Is there anything factual about it? And if there is, okay, well, I better do something about it instead of just sitting here being concerned about it.
Right.
Sure. Yeah, that's great advice also.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, on that note, what advice would you give to someone out there who maybe has a passion they're interested in and hasn't taken the first step, or maybe doesn't know how to take the next step? What would you say to them?
Learn as much as you can about it and figure out which parts interest you the most. So in volcanology, for example, there are so many different subfields in volcanology, like seismology, which is the science of earthquakes during or before or after eruptions, any kind of earthquakes around volcanoes. That is so far above my head. You see people interpreting seismograms online, which is just a snapshot of the earthquake activity, and they're making predictions. You're like, if you knew anything about that, you can't make it a prediction of it. The more you know, the more complicated it is. So if you want to go into a specific field, figure out what that is first. Read as much as you can about all the different areas of something you're interested in. Watch documentaries, watch eruption videos online, or, music videos, or whatever your interest might be. And feel out which sets your heart on fire, like which makes you go, wow, that is so cool, and follow that. Just keep following that.
I love that.
And know that it might get hard, and that's okay. That doesn't mean you're failing. It's a part of it sometimes. Keep going. Reach out to other people. Figure out who has done it before, who's done something similar to what you want to do, and reach out and get help and support. You don't have to do it alone.
I love that. That's all really good advice.
I just want to hand the podcast over to you. This is your podcast.
Will
now.
you just host this weekly for us? We'll just sit and listen.
It's so good. I love that. Feel it out instead of figure it out. I'm a chronic figure outer and need to be more of a feel outer probably. But I love that too. I think gathering information is so powerful. So I think that's really good advice. We talk a lot too in doing our own scary thing. Which, does she know about that?
Probably not. Anna and I, so we both have different careers. I'm a 15-year into a photography career, and she's actually a licensed therapist. But we are getting ready to release an album. And so
awesome. Not a photography album or a therapy album.
A musical album.
Yeah.
And it's been such a long road, and just honestly, and just believing we have the right to even do it,
Yeah.
And that's so much of our own story. And that's sort of what set us on this path of figuring out, what were the hurdles you faced? Like, everybody faces hurdles. And I loved what you shared about wondering if you were good enough. I think that's universal. It has to be, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're like some huge narcissist.
I was gonna say,
like,
unless you're a psychopath, then you're not too worried about it.
yeah. And so I'm just trying to get that message out there that it's so normal to wonder if you can do it, and don't let that stop you. Don't let that cripple you.
Right.
Because you have the right to do it. And like you said, if it lights you on fire, if it makes you feel like you're coming alive, like that's probably the road you need to run down,
Yeah. Because if you feel that way about something, no matter how hard it's going to get, you're going to remember why you're doing it. Even if you forget it for a day or two. But, having that...
Right. Or a year.
Yeah. Sometimes that happens. Having that excitement about something will pull you through more than anything else that's just not that exciting to you. And the more you go forward in a field and meet other people as well who you once viewed as brilliant and incredible and rock solid, and you realize they have exactly the same fears as you do, it's...
Yes.
Yes.
It's so important.
You're like, does that bring me up here or does that bring them down here?
It definitely levels the playing
field. It levels us all.
It does.
Levels us out. If you feel like you're not ready or you can't do anything else, you can gather information. And that's so powerful too. Like we always talk about, not that we're calling ourselves actual scientists, don't mishear me. But
I am nowhere near being a scientist.
I could technically be considered a behavioral scientist, but only at the master's level. So I'm not going to claim it. But what I am saying is that we really have lived our scary thing and our scary process so far so much by experiment. And, maybe not empirical experiments, but experiments nonetheless, where we're basically, building our own repertoire of experience to draw from that says like, yes, I do deserve this. And yes, I can do this. And yes, I may have doubts or I may be afraid, but it's worth it to push through. And I just think it's really powerful the way that has also manifested so much in your story. That's so cool.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to sit back and go, okay, yeah, this is scary and this current situation sucks, but what's the worst that could happen? And that's something I've been asking myself on a daily basis lately is, what if I go to Italy and my visa doesn't come through? What's the worst case scenario? It's like, well, it's not ideal. I'd have to go back to New Zealand. And while that's incredibly expensive, I at least have family to go back to that would take me in open arms and have me sobbing and crying and, I'm just a mess if this happened. I would have that support. So taking stock of what's the worst case scenario and what do you have to support you through that worst case scenario. And once you've looked that in the eyes and gone, I can get through that. It's okay. It would suck, but I can get through that. It may not be ideal, but I will survive it. Then it does make it easier to, move forward with that information of I can get through the worst case scenario. Everything's going to be okay.
I love it. So, so powerful. Thank you so much.
I want to be a volcanologist.
Come hang out with me.
You'd be mad at me if I switch gears.
No, we can totally, 10 years.
Listen.
10 years and we can start.
Okay.
I love it. Thank you so much again. Can you tell us where everyone can find you online and follow along?
Yeah, Twitter is the best place. That's just at Janine Krippner. So that's JANINEKRIPPNER. But I'm not hard to find online.
Awesome.
Just look for the blue check mark.
Yes.
I got that
elusive.
just before the Nazis ruined it for everyone else. So before they're like, no, we're not doing this anymore. Just got in there. So.
Oh, man.
Wow.
Awesome.
Well, we will be sure to put links and info in our show notes too, so people can find you.
Cool.
If you liked today's episode, it would mean so much to us if you took a moment to review us on iTunes, and be sure to check the show notes for all of our social media links and to keep in touch with us there. Tune in next week as we have another exciting interview with poet and costume designer Amanda Wilkinson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.